Everyone, my name is Cameron Nix, and unfortunately Victoria cannot be here today, but we are nonetheless excited to talk about our campaign proposal, Being Aware is Taking Care. Are you at risk for HIV? So throughout this presentation, I will be talking about the campaign overview, so the topic that we'll be talking about and why it's important, as well as who our campaign will be addressing via the audience, how we'll address that audience via the channel analysis, as well as relating everything we've talked about thus far to our goals and objectives, and finally our message strategies. So what those strategies are and how they relate back to theory. So we're aware of the title of the campaign, but what does this pertain to? Well, this campaign will be talking about HIV, or the human immunodeficiency virus. HIV in infected individuals weakens their immune system so that they are less able to fight off infection. In addition, HIV leads to this condition called AIDS, or acquired immunodeficiency virus. HIV is highly prevalent in the United States and associated US territories, where 1.2 million people in these areas are believed to have HIV. And lastly, HIV is highly prevalent among all age groups. For example, 21% of newly diagnosed cases of HIV in 2018 were among this youth age group between 13 to 24 years old, and there was a slightly less percentage of newly diagnosed cases being a part of this older adult age group, 50 years and up. Despite this lower percentage of newly diagnosed cases being among this older adult population, this is still our primary audience. And that is because there is a general lack of knowledge about HIV and a lack of HIV testing among this group. According to Ford 2014, older adults are 40% less likely to partake in HIV testing than their younger adult counterparts. And if we had the ability, we would have liked to create a secondary campaign to address physicians as a secondary audience. And that is because, according to ARIA, physicians believe that their patients are uncomfortable talking about HIV. And because of this, those physicians are less likely to have conversations about HIV with their patients in consultations. So to address this audience, we have our channel analysis, and so we'll use 4 major modes or channels. The first one being a commercial that we'll place within hospital waiting rooms. So that is necessary because, according to SHEER 2018, 65% of older adults 50 and up use television as a primary source of news, and that increases with age past age 64. In addition, it's necessary to incorporate this in hospital waiting rooms, as we'll talk about later with the cue to action. Second, we'll talk about communication with physicians, as discussed in the pamphlet. And we'll talk about Facebook as a primary source of channel analysis because, according to Perrin and Anderson 2017, 67% of older adults 65 and up use the internet. And of that 67%, according to Anderson and Perrin 2019, 50% of older adults 65 and up use Facebook specifically. But unfortunately, for those of individuals who do not use Facebook or any other internet source, it's necessary to have verbal communication with the physicians and a pamphlet to address those other individuals. And you can see the pamphlet here. Now, everything we've talked about thus far should relate back to our goals and objectives. Our goals being to increase the knowledge that older adults have about HIV contraction and risk, and then to increase HIV testing. So the idea is, by increasing the knowledge that older adults have about HIV, it will increase their likelihood of getting tested. And then second, it would be to increase the amount of pamphlets and to increase the amount of commercials that we create to relate back to these goals. And so those goals we hope to achieve by 5% and 10% respectively. And so finally, our message strategies will all relate back to the health belief model. And we're using the health belief model because this addresses motivational factors that spark individual behavior change. So the first 2 constructs within this theory and model are perceived susceptibility and perceived severity. The idea is that by increasing the perception of susceptibility and severity, we will increase the likelihood of behavior change. So susceptibility is the likelihood that older adults believe that they will get HIV and how susceptible they believe they are, versus severity, which addresses the seriousness. So do older adults believe that HIV is serious when they get it? And so our message hopes to target older adults and say that older adults do know that they are susceptible for HIV and that HIV is serious. So an example here is within the pamphlet that shows the symptoms and addresses transmission and prevention. But within a commercial and Facebook post, we could also describe US statistics such as relating back to older adults with HIV, because we can talk about that statistic being that 17% of newly diagnosed cases of older adults relating back to that older adult group, so that they believe they are both susceptible and severity is high. Second, we'd like to address perceived benefits and perceived barriers. So in order to create a behavior change, perceived benefits need to outweigh perceived barriers. So things that motivate those older adults to get tested for HIV should outweigh the things that deter them from getting tested for HIV. And the methods that we hope to use to target this, one example being the stigma of HIV should be talked about, because these older adults can believe that, according to this HIV.gov source and the pamphlet, that HIV is primarily associated with the LGBTQ+ community, but this is a condition that can affect this group as well, among heterosexual individuals as well. And then second, we might address the viral load. So an example of something that an older adult might hear from a physician is that by getting tested early for HIV, it can lessen their viral load, or the amount of physical virus present in that older adult's body. And so by lessening the viral load in that older adult's body, it lessens the amount of contagious they are to other individuals. And the overall idea with benefits as barriers is so older adults believe that it is more beneficial than harmful to get tested for HIV. Lastly, we'd like to address self-efficacy and a cue to action. So self-efficacy relates to how confident older adults are in getting tested for HIV, and are they even aware that they should be tested for HIV? So relating back to those channel analysis, having commercials present in hospital waiting rooms should address that initial cue to action. And so not only the commercial, but having communication with doctors addressing the ease of getting tested and the affordability, such as what an older adult might say in that quotation, is necessary. And so thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it, and just check out the citations at the very end.